It's the Planet Traditions channel, presented by Kendra Moses.
Hello and welcome to the Planet Traditions channel. My name is Kendra Moses, and as always, we have our resident chef Kai off camera. Do you know who the Food Whisperer is? You know, I think I do. It's you. Yep. All of you. See, the Food Whisperer is an entity of sorts. And it's an entity that we all pretty much inherently have. If you think about it, the Food Whisperer has to be in each and every one of us. Now, to explain this concept, have there ever been moments in time where you had a certain taste for some food that seemed to be stronger than usual? Yeah, maybe something that you typically eat, so it's not that surprising. And it may be something that's actually your favorite food, so again, not that surprising. But have you ever had a certain need to eat a certain food or to drink a certain drink? And I'm not talking about recreational drinks either, but just something simple. Maybe a juice, maybe more water, maybe a certain type of food. And you notice that for some reason you can't shake that feeling. And like I said, if it's something that you want to eat, you may not even notice this or pay attention to it. But have you noticed sometimes you could go, I don't know, days, months, years without a certain type of food, and then all of a sudden you really have to have that food. And you just, again, you probably just shrug it off to say, well, it's been a while and I'm close enough to change stuff up from how I've been typically eating. But what if these things had a deeper meaning? What if these things are actually your body telling you that there's something that you need to do to aid it and assist it? The human body is a wondrous thing. If you think about it, going all the way back to before we even existed, and this earth, a floating rock, went through its changes to ultimately terraform itself. And when it started to terraform, and then time passed, single cell organisms start to develop. Signs of life, our first signs of life start to develop. And it didn't need us. It didn't have us. There were no human beings. It didn't need us at all. These things, these single cell organisms did not need us at all. But they survived. They survived without us being the quote unquote alpha species. They didn't need us. But they survived and they evolved and they developed and they turned into all the other creatures that were here before us. The creatures that we actually are descended from on an evolutionary scale. A complicated one, but we'll worry about that later. And it wasn't for these single cell organisms knowing how to live and survive, having its own rendition of Darwinism before Darwin even came along to give it a name, we probably wouldn't even be here. Or again, our species may be a different rendition of itself. But everything did go along on the timeline that we are at now. So if you think about the cells are brilliant, brilliant entities. And the human body are made out of so many cells. Our DNA strands alone are longer than any of us could possibly imagine. And just because it fits in a nice, neat, tidy little body, we don't think about it because it's not bulging out. It's not doing anything untoward if you're in a typical healthy human body. It's doing everything normally. And you don't think about it. Like so many things you don't think about. Like you don't think about the process of taking your next breath. You just depend on your body, especially a healthy one. You just give it 2 thoughts. You wake up, even when you're asleep. You don't think about there's something I need to program into my body in order to breathe. There's precautions people think about, like not being in a heavy smoke-filled room or not having a bunch of toxins infecting and causing their lungs distress. But for the most part, just breathing, you don't give it a thought. And I said this even speaking as an asthmatic. When I was younger, I had to be hooked up to a machine. I constantly stopped breathing in my sleep every night. The machine showed us that one night I stopped breathing in my sleep 4 times. I had quite a few anomalies, which science would basically write off as mutations. It doesn't matter how bulky or healthy the body looks. The body does go through certain abnormalities, and as some science articles would call mutations. So in regards to me, for the breathing, my lung was an abnormality. Even at that age, even knowing the condition my body was in and the importance about what was happening to me, there was so much I could do but to just go to sleep when I could. There was nothing I could do. A doctor could hook me up to a machine, but they could not tell me how to program my body to say, okay, you breathe now. It doesn't work that way. So I had to depend on the body and the cells within the body, who all have their individual jobs and doing what it needs to be done to make its host, me, stay alive. And that's what the food whisperer is. That is the connection. Now, although this right now has nothing to do with food, but if you think about it, how many things your body does without you knowing, without you giving the input, without you giving a particular command. Because honestly, you thinking about, oh, I want to get up now, doesn't necessarily move those muscles. These are things you're depending on your body to do for you, just because you prefer for it to do it. You really depend heavily on your body. So why would we think that we're only depending on our body to make us breathe, to make us stand, to make us talk, without the inclusion of other things we do on a daily basis, like eat? So when we think about the body and everything it does, because even with bigger anomalies, like it wasn't huge, but I wasn't born with mutation tubes either. I had to have plastic tubing put in my ear. There were complications. They had to leave the tubes in my ear unless they were resulted in a near fatality. So the cells said, okay, we couldn't do it before. We realized there was a problem in the development of this host body, and we could not make it come together, but now we have the tubes. And so what the cells in the body did is said, I'm going to continue to construct, and worked on the matter at hand and what's wrong. Now the doctors are credited for, like I said, putting the tubes in my ears in the first place, but beyond that, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't even remove them because of the complications. So my body said it will take it upon itself to mend itself. Now, as an infant, of course, I had no input in this whatsoever. I could not take any credit. The doctors could take some credit of having the tube, but the body itself, those cells and everything else that's involved in the human body physiology, it said, I have a way to adapting this unit that has been added to make sure that this person is now closer to being a full formed normal human being. Quotation marks on normal. And so it did it. And so it grew over the tubing. And wonders of all wonders, almost 40 years later, I can hear. I've been able to hear my whole life. And so it's an interesting thing because there was very little input by any other human being besides the human being that is the host. You are all your own hosts to the Food Whisperer. You're all your own host to your body, period. Because what happens is the body will do everything in its power to make sure that it lives. Even with massive complications, the typical body does everything it can within the ramifications of its abilities to continue to function and go. Now, for any other things like the actual movement and attention, that is where you come in. That is where that brain power comes in. When you not only just think about what you want to do, you will yourself to get up and do it. And so the Food Whisperer is a rendition of this based on the terms of you eating. And sometimes it can manifest itself as food cravings or food preferences at any given moment. Your body may say that you're having issues with inflammation. Your doctor may tell you this. It's something that your body is telling you initially through the pain, through a certain feeling of stiffness or what have you, and you may go to a doctor, the doctor say, yes, indeed you have deep inflammation. And they may even prescribe you a medication. But you know that some things like inflammation are chronic. So medication may help, but it's still not a long-term resolution. But you may notice that now, after this diagnosis, after this certain affliction that may be a little new to you, that you may find yourself craving things like spinach. All of a sudden you want spinach on your sandwiches, spinach salad, everything else. It's a certain meal that you want. And if you take a time to think about it, especially if it's a little curious to you about where's this new taste coming from for these certain types of food? Why am I developing this new type of appetite? But just take the time out to investigate the foods that you take in. Not just look at it as for the point of a thing that looks really good or that tastes really good. But out of some curiosity, just see what that food is composed of. What's the main nutrients in it? What's the main health benefits that it's been documented in health journals or medical write-ups or what have you? You may find out that it's closely correlated to an anomaly that you may have. And more so still, you may actually notice that this is actually helping you. This change, your body whispering to you that this would be good to have tonight, could be an instance of the Food Whisperer basically enlisting you for your help. It can only tell you so much. It can only tell you what you already know, like there's something wrong, or you may not know. And still, it can still tell you because the body knows exactly what's happening and knows about the anomaly that it's going through. So by having that knowledge, by the cells knowing, by the body knowing what it's particularly supposed to be, something is off biologically. These things know that something is off. And it knows that it needs something to counteract and help it. And so that's when the Food Whisperer comes in, where you may find yourself having certain cravings and preferences for foods that you probably haven't had in a while, or you probably wondering, why now? And if you take the time out after you've enjoyed your meal to just take a small little glance at a health journal or something like that, you may find, along with observing your body yourself. Like I said, the cells can tell you what's going on. Your body can tell you what's going on, possibly internally, if you're listening to that food whisperer. It could be a good inclination about something that you may need that you're lacking. Maybe a deficiency, or maybe just something that medicine alone is not going to do for you. For example, I've had chronic pain a long time, and it's something that I just, for the lack of a better word, shrugged off. It's nothing I could do. I've been on multiple pain medications, all types underneath the sun. They don't help. But then I started to see some relief after a while. But then I had to go back and catalog where this relief was. Because it wasn't just the medicine, because the medicine wasn't working. Then I noticed there were certain things that I was eating that I had included into my diet. It was certain things that I started having more of a taste for, like more protein, or more green tea, or more spinach, or more ginger. These were things that when I looked back reading an article one day, they were all meant to help with inflammation. So my basic diet ended up helping my health concerns with the inclusion of the medication, because the medication on its own was not able to do what it needed to do. See, the body recognizes things like food more. Food is a basic thing that the earth has grown out for us. And we're made of everything that the earth is made out of. We're made out of everything that the galaxy is made out of. So these are all elements that are found that, of course, the human body will recognize because it's made out of it. The human body may react to medication, but it doesn't necessarily recognize it as a natural component. And ideally, the food whisperer wants a natural component to help it in its way to recovery, or to help it to deal with any long-term illnesses or ailments. And so we tend to ignore certain key things. I'm not talking about like recreational items like certain drinks, or necessarily a certain junk food. Now those things are typically basically preference things based on individual pleasure. I'm talking about the regular foods that you intake that you still may have high level of pleasure and enjoyment for, but those foods may be more akin to what the food whisperer is actually asking you to do. See, when we have different needs, the body can only do but so much. But what the body can do is impart its knowledge to us. We have to go along a life learning things and recognizing things and making certain connections ourselves. We think about just the thinking game and how we are absorbing what we're hearing and learning throughout the world around us. But ideally, your body is like a master hard drive, that state-of-the-art computer. Even if you're not in the best health, it's still like that state-of-the-art computer that knows everything that it needs to survive and go along its way. But it knows that potassium will help transfer nutrients and help with muscle and nerve communication throughout the body. And so what happens is two possible things. It recognizes this item. I'm not saying that it's going along and cataloging everything, but if you come into contact with certain foods, your body is logging that information. Your body is logging the fact that you ate a great deal of potatoes, either white or sweet potatoes. These items are filled with potassium. Your body remembers that. So next time I need any help with any nutrient transport, any muscle or nerve communication, or any fluid balance, I'm going to make sure I send a message to this host that I need potatoes, either white or sweet potatoes, or maybe watermelon, or some other food that this host has already eaten that has reacted into a favorable way when I needed these items. That's why food is so important, because most of the food that we intake are all beneficial for the day-to-day balancing act that the body is going through to survive and thrive. So we think about things like calcium. Calcium, as most people already know, is basic mainstream information. It's good for your bones and teeth and some other aspects of the health in the body. So what do? You go for things like milk and dairy. Those particular things usually have calcium in it. So you may find yourself, if you're having certain issues with the bones, you may start to say, if you're not lactose intolerant, you may start to say, I could really need a higher intake of milk or some sort of dairy item. And if you are vegan and you find different types of supplements, like as far as food alternatives that you do because you don't eat any meat byproducts, there are typically other things that have these same nutrients in it. So for you, the go-to food may be different, but you may find yourself still craving that particular go-to food that your body knows will lead you to this particular nutrient that it needs desperately and quickly. The Food Whisperer is not a registered physician. For serious and/or persistent medical problems, please consult your PCP. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us for another week. We hope to see you again next time. Bye-bye.